guys, welcome back to another episode of Making Monsters. I'm Taylor Dahl, and we're coming off a real bummer of a game, honestly. We just watched a Hail Mary, a successful Hail Mary. Granted, a lot of things going wrong. If you want to hold somebody and give Jaden Daniels 12.79 seconds to throw the ball, then of course, any quarterback going to complete a pass, even in a Hail Mary moment, and with Tyreek messing up when you have 13 seconds to hold the ball. And the NFL has to figure out things like that. I know they usually don't make the calls on Hail Marys, but when someone has 13 seconds to throw because their offensive lineman is blatantly holding one of the defensive linemen, and in this instance, our pass rusher, Jake Martin, that shouldn't be allowed. It just shouldn't. You gave them that football game. Granted, there was a lot of other opportunities for the Bears and they couldn't take. Uh, Giving the ball to a backup offensive lineman on the goal line when Roshan's 100% on the goal line for touchdowns in his attempts, over 4 attempts in the league. He's the only one with that 100% mark. So bad coaching. Could have called a timeout, could have discussed some things on what's going on. Maybe if you called that timeout, Tyreek's not going up and down the sideline, not paying attention. There's a lot of things that factor into this loss, but this podcast is not to get into that. I do want to do my monster of the week, though. I am working on an episode of DeAndre Swift. I think the Bears wouldn't have even been in this game if it wasn't for DeAndre Swift. 18 attempts for 129 yards and a touchdown, hurdling guys all over the place, running guys over. It's something that we've just progressively seen DeAndre Swift become a bigger and bigger part of this offense, and it's been really fun to see that. Now, if the passing offense and protection for Caleb can get a little better, then this offense will be what I thought it could have been. I said in the beginning of the year that if the run game gets going, I truly think that will solve a lot of the other problems. Unfortunately, you saw Braxton Jones go down. Tevin Jenkins was in and out with injury. Bill Murray is now on IR. We found out today, we found out on Wednesday, Kyron Amagaji is going to be out now. So a lot of things that factor into this kind of being a mess. And so we will see. The guess positive is that Arizona's pass rush has been terrible, almost non-existent. So if there's a game that you can keep Caleb hopefully clear, it's this game, and get through some of these injuries, it's this game. But we'll see. Anyways, I have Darren Urban. He's covered the Arizona Cardinals for 25 seasons, and he works for the ArizonaCardinals.com. He is going to join me. We are going to preview this, talk a little bit about Kyler Murray, talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. That's obviously been a big name. And then when you talk about some of their other pieces, like Paris Johnson, who a lot of people are familiar with too, because it was a draft pick a lot of people wanted. So we'll get into all of that stuff. Plenty to talk about. And I think there are even some connections between the two head coaches. So we'll get into that too. A lot of stuff, but I just wanted to give the shout out to DeAndre Swift, because I feel like it's just been so much fun to watch him just progress throughout the season. And now you just hope that the rest of the offense and the offensive line can start clicking, because I just think it's just such an important part. And when you look at any of the teams that are leading right now, when it comes to the Ravens, when it comes to the Steelers, when it comes to some of these top teams, they all have top running games. So if there's any indication for anything, that's exactly what you should probably look at, is those teams who are leading the league right now, whether it's in wins or whether it's in offensive totals and EPAs. All of them are able to run the ball very well. So I do want to go ahead and we'll do a quick give a little love to Underdog Fantasy. And that way, after that, we can just head straight into this Darren Urban podcast. I did talk to Darren Urban a while ago when some of the free agents were coming out, I think 3 seasons ago now, when Christian Kirk was talking about, I can't remember if he was a free agent or was traded. But there was rumors that they were going to be parting ways with him. And I did talk to him previously about Christian Kirk. So now it's almost a whole new offense over there outside of Kyler Murray, and a lot of young when it comes to their secondary too. So a ton of things to talk about. And the Bears defense just keep being a strong point, even without Jaquan Brisker and Kyler Gordon, who did not practice again today. So we'll keep an eye on that too. I would love to have both of them back. But at the same time, if there's 2 games that you can afford, maybe not, it could be Arizona and the Patriots, and then hopefully get them back when you have this crazy run at the end of the season with all the divisional opponents and with the 49ers and with the Seahawks. But anyways, let's get over to this quick, give some love to Underdog, and then we'll get to the interview with Darren Urban of ArizonaCardinals.com. All right, Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and $2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. Compete against others just by selecting higher or lower on 2 or more players' stats. You could win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. You guys know me. I love those higher and lowers. It just makes it easy. I'm not someone who's like super in depth when it comes to the betting. So the higher lower on Underdog Fantasy just makes it so much easier because it's just very clear, easy. The app is super easy to use. So there's a lot of things that just make it for everybody if you want to try and win some money. Obviously, one of the things that I think is really cool that they have, one of the features, is the red zone rush. It's a game you will not find anywhere else, so that's kind of cool too. You just pick whether or not a player will score a touchdown by swiping right for yes and left for no. Literally, that's all you have to do. Simple as that. Plus, your entry will be automatically boosted, and you'll get a 51% profit boost when you play. That's called Red Zone Rush. And another thing that I do like too is Underdog puts the power to cash out in your hands. You can either keep writing with your entry, or you can tap the Win Now button and you can cash out whenever you want. So that's nice too, because you can get that money and cash out right away whenever you want. So remember, Underdog is the best place to play champions. So sign up and deposit now using promo code CITY, CITY, to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash right away. And so let's go over some of these actually. Let's look at what this looks like for this weekend so far in Underdog Fantasy. If you want to go that higher or lower, Caleb Williams, 222.5 passing yards they have. That kind of shows what they think about that Arizona secondary and their defense in general. You can go higher or lower on 1.5 passing touchdowns. And if you want to go to the other side, if you maybe have some faith in James Conner because of the Bears' run defense lately, it has 70.5 rushing yards for James Conner this weekend against the Bears. You can go higher or lower on that. So a lot of different ways you can go. Just make sure you download the app today and use the code CITY, CITY, to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. That's CITY, CITY. And reminder, you can do that higher or lower. You make the call on Underdog, just making that decision. You download the app to be able to do that. Just remember, must be 18 and up, 19 and up in Alabama and New England, 19 and up in Colorado for some games, 21 up in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. And if you are concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. If you're in Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP 53342. If you're in New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8 HOPE-NY, or text HOPE-NY 467-369. And that is Underdog Fantasy. All right, guys, let's get over to this interview with Darren Urban, talk some Chicago Bears and Arizona Cardinals football. All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Making Monsters. We've got another preview for you. Bears coming off of a heartbreaking Hail Mary loss at the end of the Washington Commanders game. A lot of things coming out since then. The video of Tyreek Stevenson getting kind of going viral around Twitter of him taunting fans and not being in the right spot. So hopefully a lot of Bears fans hoping you can bounce back out of this. But we're going to preview, obviously, this game coming up with the Arizona Cardinals. And Darren Urban, probably not a better person to talk to, covering the Cardinals for his 25th season for that. So Darren, thanks so much for hopping on with me.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So let's start with, I think, to me, the most obvious, because when you talk about NFL success, you talk about quarterbacks. And Kyler Murray seems like he's back to pre-ACL tear Kyler Murray. It's been really fun to watch what he's been able to do this year for people maybe who not have been able to pay attention to as much. 67.2 completion percentage, over 1,600 yards, 11 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions. In addition to that, a couple rushing touchdowns with over 300 rushing yards. So tell us a little bit about Kyler Murray so far this season and what you've seen out of him.
Well, I think in a lot of ways he's coming off his best game of the season that he played in Miami. He's had 2 excellent games this year. The game earlier against the Rams and then against the Dolphins. And that doesn't mean he's played poorly. I think in a lot of ways, some of the things that he has not been able to do this year might have less to do with him in particular. But look, I know people have a certain feeling about Kyler Murray and who he is as a quarterback. I've seen this guy his entire career. The big thing, like you said, he's completely over that ACL. He looks fantastic. he by himself probably avoided maybe 5 sacks last weekend in Miami that they should have had, and they were blitzing. It's not like the offensive line was porous. It was just the Dolphins were coming after him, and he made sure that they paid for it. So I think everything that you see with Kyler right now is the kind of stuff that the Cardinals have been hoping would be a little bit more consistent over the years, but is starting to become that this year. And I think he's in an offense that he very much vibes in. He likes his coaching staff quite a bit. They built up his weapons. They're still looking for the consistency in the pass game that really just showed up for the first time on Sunday, and they're hoping to continue that, which will be interesting against this Bears defense. But I think overall, Kyler Murray is one of the better quarterbacks in the league, and you can argue about where he lands in terms of overall. But I think he's really good, and he's the reason that this team is where it is right now.
Let's talk about a couple of those weapons. The obvious one is Marvin Harrison Jr., which we will get to, but I want to start with Michael Wilson, actually, because they drafted him in 2023. He came, even was utilized, especially towards the end of the season last year. And then now you're still seeing him be a big part of this weapon, even with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride also being those receiving weapons. But tell us a little bit about Michael Wilson and being that wide receiver, too, for Kyler, and kind of the comfortability that he adds in the game for Kyler.
I think, Michael Wilson isn't a guy that a lot of people around the league are going to know. And, he's still, he's only in his second year. He's still learning a lot of stuff. But the kid's from Stanford, I can tell you that he's one of the smartest guys that I've ever come in contact with. And one of the reasons they love him so much isn't just for his receiving skills. It's the fact that he's willing to do the dirty stuff. He's an excellent run blocker. That's one of the reasons he's earned so much playing time, because this team, when all is said and done, would prefer to kind of grind it out on the ground when things are going well. And that's something that they have been able to do a lot of the time with James Conner. So Michael Wilson is a guy that he can be there when needed. Obviously, he caught another touchdown from Kyler this weekend. He's not going to put up eye-popping numbers, and partly because of the offense and partly because of, as you mentioned, Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison being here. But I think he's an important part of this offense, and I think he's only going to continue to grow and become more important to them as the years go on.
Yeah, he's been someone that, like you said, probably the most fans wouldn't know too much about Michael Wilson. But when you go back and you watch, even this year, I think he has 3 touchdowns on the season so far. So he does seem like him and Kyler are beginning to form that connection. And then there's Marvin Harrison Jr., who I think has lived up to the expectations of what you thought. I know in Jacksonville, they're talking about a lot of Brian Thomas Jr. and how he's kind of stepped onto the scene and been this guy. But Marvin Harrison Jr. is just one of the guys you expected to be that. And you also knew he was getting thrown into that wide receiver role, the number 1 role right away, which is a big task to be asked to do as a rookie wide receiver. So in your opinion, how has he handled that side of it?
Well, I think he's handled it well. I mean, the kid is incredibly mature for his age. Now, whether this was really a breakout game. He had the 4 catches for 130 yards against the Rams in week 2. Everybody thought that was it. And then it never really came to. And then he had no catches against Green Bay and got a concussion, and he's been okay, but he hasn't made that huge burst on the scene like you saw from a Jamar Chase or a Justin Jefferson. And I think that's what everybody was hoping for. Now, last week, he looked like a different guy. I don't know why that came about, particularly last week. And the Dolphins came into the game with the best pass defense in the league, but he and Kyler really looked. There was one issue early in the game on a route that they looked like they had some miscommunication, and there's definitely been a learning curve. But Marvin had 2 of the most incredible catches. He had the touchdown catch where he was diving, and then the other one that was originally called incomplete, where on review it was shown that he did make the catch. And he's that kind of guy, and I just think he's getting more and more comfortable as we go. And I don't know if he's going to have monster statistics by the end of the year, but I don't really worry about where Marvin Harrison is going in his career. And, when you talk about those top 3 receivers and who is going to go first, and Harrison and Neighbors and Rome Odunze, and I think the Cardinals are very happy that they have Harrison, and we'll see where the three of those guys go in their careers. But I think by the end of this season, you're going to see why Marvin Harrison was the first receiver taken in the draft.
Yeah, and we're in a similar light, still kind of waiting for Rome Odunze too. He had the one game where he had 112 yards and a touchdown, and similar to what you guys went through. Thought that was the game. Thought that was the breakout moment for Rome, and then things got a little quiet. This last week, the offense took a while. It took 3.5 quarters to get going, but the moments that you felt the momentum started shifting, it was Rome Odunze. His separation, you feel like he's almost always open, and so Bears fans have been shouting to get the ball more to Rome. It is a little bit different, obviously, because you have DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Cole Kmet, some of these other older guys on the roster too that you would expect to get the ball also. So same trajectory though. I think of there's a lot of hope in the fan base of this continuing throughout the season and becoming that guy that everyone kind of expected. I know you mentioned a little bit about the Bears defense, and the Bears defense has been really good. I mean, and this goes beyond this year. Last year, towards the end of the season, they're on the, I think, 13-14 game streak now of not allowing more than 21 points. And a lot of that is the secondary with Jalen Johnson and Tyreek Stevenson and Jaquan Brisker, who's been missing time lately. They've been able to do a lot back there. And then you add the linebackers and Tremaine Edmonds and obviously TJ Edwards. And so there's a lot of good. And there's the pass rush has even taken a step up to last year. Their run defense has not been the best, though. Their run defense is where teams have kind of found that if they could take advantage of that. And you mentioned James Conner. When James Conner is on, it seems like that is kind of the recipe to leading to the Cardinals being able to score offensively and doing a lot of good things and opening opportunities for Kyler Murray. So talk about that a little bit. James Conner, his season so far, and what he adds, what element he adds to that offense.
James Conner is really the heart and soul of this offense. When he came in from Pittsburgh, he had a certain reputation because all the running backs are tough in Pittsburgh, and then that's kind of what they do. And I don't know if anybody around the NFL would think of it this way, but I don't think there's any question. And he's about to play his 100th career game on Sunday. It'll be 50 games with the Cardinals. He had 50 games with the Steelers. I don't think there's any question he's been a better running back with the Cardinals, hands down. Statistically, that's proven out. And just the way he goes, I mean, he does not look like a guy who is, I think he's 28, pushing 29. He's gotten a lot of carries in this league, and he seems like he's getting better. Now, there have been times like against the Dolphins where they decided, okay, we're not going to let James Conner beat us. And it took them a long time to get going last weekend, but in the fourth quarter, when they needed a couple of big plays, he ran it and he was doing it tough. And he's the kind of guy that is going to get you. You're going to look up and you're going to be like, he doesn't seem like he should be gaining that many yards, but he's churning it out to the where, oh my God, a lot of times when he's having a good game, it's like, oh wow, he really did that. I mean, James Conner had, I think, more 20-yard rushers last year than anybody in the league, which he's not the guy you would think of for that. But he's really tough to bring down. Again, the heart and soul of this thing. And, the Bears struggling against the run, that's going to play into what this team wants to do. Now, maybe the Bears do the Dolphins thing and they're like, okay, we're going to not let the run game beat us. And that's fine. And they might be a little bit more equipped than maybe the Dolphins are right now, because the Dolphins were down a couple of pass rushers to handle the pass. But I think there's no question that they're going to try and get James Conner off and try and get the lead in that way. I mean, this team started the year, the first 5 games of the year, they scored a touchdown on their opening possession. Now, they haven't done it since then, but part of the reason is because James Conner was so effective right out of the box. And I'll be very interested to see what Conner looks like in that first quarter on Sunday.
Yeah, it's definitely one of our biggest concerns this weekend, just because of some of those struggles against the run and the games that have ended bad, as in last week, which obviously that was off that Hail Mary, but still there was a lot of moments for Brian Robinson, a lot of moments for Austin Eckler. The Jonathan Taylor had his breakout game this season against us. So those are definitely some of the concerns when it comes to the Bears defense. So we will see how they kind of address some of these things. Do they try to just completely focus on that and let some of that take over? We'll see. But I do want to talk a little bit about the offensive line. Paris Johnson, a name that a lot of people here in Chicago are familiar with, a guy that a lot of people wanted on the Chicago Bears. How has Paris fared so far in his first couple seasons, and that offensive line as a whole? How has it looking so far this year?
I think the Cardinals offensive line is one of those lines that partly because of past history with this team and their offensive line, I think it's been underrated the last couple of years. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to sit here and say the Cardinals offensive line is one of the best in the league. And right now they're working without their right tackle and their right guard. The right guard was Will Hernandez. He's out for the season with an ACL tear. Jonah Williams, the right tackle, has been out since the end of the first quarter of the first game. Now, he just had his practice window open, so I suppose there's a possibility he could be back this weekend, but I would guess it would take longer than that. So he's still on IR, but I think they've done better than a lot of people thought. They've gone 3 games without allowing a sack, which this team hasn't done since 1975. And the 1975 Cardinals had 3 Pro Bowlers on that offensive line. Wow. And only allowed 8 sacks all season. So it's now, again, part of that is Kyler Murray. And last week there should have been 4 or 5 sacks. It didn't happen because of Kyler. But when he gets to who he has right now, Paris Johnson, you draft a guy high. They picked him 6 overall. You draft a guy hoping he's going to be your decade-plus starter. That's what Paris Johnson is going to be. He moved to the left side this year, played all his rookie season on the right side, moved to the left side. He's been doing a great job. He's everything you want in left tackle, and he's only getting better. He's perfect in the locker room. I think that's going to end up being – I know there were some people wondering if he was even the best tackle in that draft. I can't speak to the other tackles right now, but I can tell you that they did the right thing by taking Paris Johnson, and I think that's going to be something that's really going to help them long term.
Yeah, when we flip over to the defensive side, if there's 2 things that I could name, Darren, in this game that the Arizona can probably take advantage of, I mentioned the one and being able to run the ball against the Bears defense, but also I think another thing is being able to get to Caleb Williams and create that pass rush. I know Arizona has struggled with the pass rush to start the season so far. But if you watched the Washington game last week, it was not pretty. He was pressured on 51% of his dropbacks. I want to say it was like 23 of 36 or something like that. Not good. And it created other things to just kind of not work. It took a while for the run game to get going because of that. A lot of his passes were inaccurate because of that. And it wasn't just last week. It's been an issue throughout the season. And then now you add on the left tackle Braxton Jones went down during the game last week. They put in the rookie Kyron Amagaji. He went down last week. Bill Murray, the kind of floating guard, went down last week. So they lost 3 offensive linemen last week, including Tevin Jenkins, who's also banged up. So take advantage of a line that already struggles against the pass rush and add in injuries. Kind of seems like it could be a recipe for Cardinals to maybe get something going.
That's a fascinating thing. We were just talking. I was talking with some of my coworkers before I came on here, because if there's anything the Cardinals aren't doing right now is rushing the passer. They've lost arguably the 2 best guys off the edge, and there were questions even if those guys have been healthy. They lost B.J. Ojulari to a ACL in the preseason training camp practice, and then they just lost Dennis Gardeck a couple weeks ago. So they don't have a lot. They just don't. And what that means, I mean, right now the guys that they have in the outside linebacker room have 1 sack among them. And that doesn't mean they can't get to the quarterback. Last week was kind of a tough, it wasn't really, I mean, Tua gets rid of the ball in like 2 seconds on almost every pass play, and there's not a lot down the field. So it's tough to judge where their pass rush was, but there's no question that there's opportunity against the Bears, but I don't know what that means. I think the Cardinals are going to have to scheme up something to make that work. And obviously it's better than going up against a really good offensive line, but I don't know exactly what that means in actual gameplay when you have these 2 units come together.
What about the back half, the secondary for the Cardinals? One of the stats I was reading is they've allowed the sixth most yards allowed in the beginning of this year, and then I think 10th most points, something around that. So, and I'm sure pass rush has to do with that. If you have no pass rush, these guys, your secondary is covering a lot of space and for a long time usually, and so that doesn't help. But thoughts about that back end and them having to go up against a DJ Moore, a Keenan Allen, a Cole Kmet, a Rome Odunze?
They've got a very young cornerback core, very young. Like everybody that's playing back there, because I don't know if Sean Murphy-Bunting will be back this week with a neck injury. If he's not, they have no cornerbacks that have been in the league for more than 2 years. Like everybody's 2023 or a rookie. So what does that mean? I think they've done an okay job. Again, when you're talking about a team that doesn't generate a ton of pass rush, they've been okay. Now, the thing that they have going for them, one of their cornerbacks, he plays the slot most of the time, Garrett Williams, has been really good. Now, he's a slot guy, but he's been really these 2 years. And then their safeties are veterans, Jalen Thompson and Budda Baker, and they're both really good. And Budda Baker is playing about as good as I've seen him play. And I don't know if that's because they're letting him do some different stuff. He was awesome in Miami last week. So he's able to kind of roam and do a little bit of things. So again, it's always hard to judge the back end when you don't have, when you have a pass rush that's struggling. But I think they do okay. I think the question's going to become for me for this defense is, one, can you slow the run down a little bit? Swift is a really good running back, and the Bears, if they run it on you, that puts you in a really tough place. And then once you do have to throw, can you make Caleb Williams look a little bit like a rookie? I don't know if he's going 4 for 16 for 36 yards or whatever he was the first 3 quarters plus against Washington. But you can't have him be the guy from the previous week, 2 weeks before that either.
Yeah. What have been your thoughts of what you've seen from Caleb so far through the start? Obviously some ups and downs, but just your initial reaction.
I mean, again, watching from afar, not other than watching Red Zone a little bit, I certainly have not watched a significant amount of Bears snaps. But I mean, I think in a lot of ways he's exactly what you think is going to happen with a rookie quarterback. The problem, I think, with a lot of people, and the Cardinals went through that with Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray came in. He was the rookie from jump, or the starter from jump. He had some flashes, but when you're a rookie, you're a rookie. And the thing Caleb has going for him is, other than the offensive line, they got him about a bunch of weapons right away, so that helps. I think for a rookie quarterback, it would be better to have, if you had to have a choice, fewer weapons and better offensive line. But I think you're going to have ups and downs, and I think that's okay. And I think we've all gotten warped a little bit because C.J. Stroud comes in the league, and now Jaden Daniels, and you're like, see, this can happen, and those aren't usual situations. And I think what Caleb is doing is what a normal rookie quarterback who's going to be just fine in this league is going to do. And so I'm not really surprised. You just don't, if you're the opposing team, you just don't want them to light you up when you're a rookie. This team got to play C.J. Stroud last year. They lost in Houston, but I think C.J. Stroud had 5 interceptions all season, and the Cardinals had 3 of them in that game. Wow. Now, unfortunately, they couldn't turn it into a win, and they had a chance at the end, and they couldn't pull it out. But I think you need to be able to jump on a rookie and have him make some mistakes. And I don't know if he's going to make those mistakes, but I think you've got to go into it thinking we've got to try and force him into a couple.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how Caleb kind of comes back from the way that the last week went, because like you said, 36 yards in the first half, not ideal. A couple more, Darren, before I let you go. I do want to talk a little bit about the NFC West, because I do think that both the NFC North and the NFC West are similar in the fact that it's a tight race from top to bottom, a little differences in why. But thoughts on the NFC West? Obviously, the Cardinals at the top of it right now. I don't think a lot of people would have said that preseason, but so far through the beginning, and I know certain teams, obviously injuries and stuff factored into some stuff, but thoughts on that division?
It feels very wide open. I mean, we're going to see what happens. The 49ers, everybody thought was the class of this division coming into the year, and they still might be. They're not going to have Ayuk, but if they can get McCaffrey back, that's going to be a big deal to them. If they can get Ricky Pearsall going as somebody to add with Kittle and with Deebo Samuel, I think they're going to ultimately be okay. Their defense isn't quite as good as everybody thought it was going to be. And now that the Cardinals beat them one time, I think there's a feeling like, okay, we can easily match with them and be in those games. The Rams and Seattle are both very interesting. I think Seattle's in a lot, very much like the Cardinals in terms of, I don't know if people are going to be afraid of them, but they can be dangerous. And I think they're going to be, as long as this division stays muddled, I don't know why they would go away. Now that the Rams probably aren't sellers and getting Nakua and Cooper Kupp back, I think Matthew Stafford is he's an excellent quarterback. So if their defense can hold up, this defense this division could really go all the way to the end. The Cardinals are probably a little bit ahead of schedule if they're in this race. Now, granted, the division came back to them a little bit, but this regime, Monty Ossenfort, Jonathan Gannon, trying to build up this roster from scratch when they walked in. So I don't know if they were thinking 10 wins and a division title in year 2, but who knows what could happen at this point. If Kyler Murray plays at a high level and this offense plays like it did last week, I think they got a chance to win some games. Their schedule is most certainly, the hard part is over. I think every one of their 4 losses is against the 6-win team right now. So who they play the rest of the year, I think is doable for the most part.
Yeah, which is very opposite of the Bears. The Bears have the Cardinals and Patriots, and then after that play every divisional opponent. So the Packers twice, Detroit twice, the Vikings twice, the Niners, and the Seahawks. So that'll be an interesting end to the season. And it's funny, Darren, when you were talking about that, the Rams not being sellers, how quickly the NFL can change from day to day, because there was rumors that, they may send Matthew Stafford to the Vikings. And then the next day it's like, never mind, Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are back. We're not selling anymore. So it is interesting. Final one before I let you go, because I think a big conversation here in Chicago is the coaching staff. And a lot of people have been very frustrated with Eberflus and some of the decision-making, especially late in games, that have kind of cost them, and still questions about Shane Waldron. They're still trying to decide kind of if they like or dislike him. But Jonathan Gannon, you guys are familiar with having that defensive-minded head coach in Arizona. How has that fared for you guys? Is there ever moments where people start to think if it's the right choice or not having that defensive guy leading?
No, it's funny because Gannon worked under Eberflus 3 years in Indy, so they're very tight. I don't think there's been. I mean, last year everybody knew this team. I mean, they didn't have Kyler Murray for half the season. Yeah. They made a lot of moves on the roster to clear cap space and all that stuff. So there weren't any expectations last year. And the way they finished, winning in Pittsburgh, winning in Philadelphia, almost winning on the last game against Seattle when Kyler came back, I think there was a lot of optimism going into this year. Now, this year, I think people were hoping this offense was going to be more explosive consistently, and it has been. I think there's been some frustration, but most of that hasn't fallen on Gannon. Most of it's fallen on the offensive coordinator, Drew Petzing, which is usual for a fan base. But again, I think it's early in the process. I think there's a long way to go in terms of how they want to get to where they want to go. And I think Jonathan Gannon has reshaped the culture here. And I know that's very cliche and corporate speak and everything, but it was something that was necessary. It got very ugly at the end when Steve Keim had his personal issues and had to leave. And I think Cliff Kingsbury was in a tough place by the time he was done here. Change was needed. I think they're in the right place right now, but we'll see what happens. They got 2 games before the bye. They got the Bears at home and they got the Jets at home. I think a lot of fans are expecting these to be victories since they're home games. And if you're 6-4 going into the bye with a 4-game winning streak, that's going to engender a lot of good faith.
Yeah, and that's what I think. It's funny because I think I read something earlier that the Bears have never won on the road, and have never lost on the road in Arizona, but Eberflus has not won a true road game and since his time here. So it's one of those records will be broken this weekend. We'll see which one that is. But again, Darren Urban, his 25th season covering the Arizona Cardinals on ArizonaCardinals.com. So Darren, thanks so much for hopping on with me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.